Members, let's start our meeting of the Subcommittee on District Council's Ordinance Amendment of Schedules 1 and 3, Order 2013. We've just formed a quorum, and it's also time for us to start. Item 1 on the agenda, meeting with deputations and the administration. Secretariat colleagues, would you please invite the attendees to come in? I think altogether we have 11 deputations and individuals to express their views. And in attendance today from the administration, we have the Deputy Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Gordon Leung. Perhaps we should wait till the deputations and individual members of the public be seated first before I continue to introduce to you the attending officials.
歡迎各位
Welcome, deputations and individual members of the public. Let me continue to introduce the government representatives to you. We have the Principal Assistant Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs as well, Ms. Helen Chung, and Ms. Emma Wong, Senior Government Counsel. Welcome. I would let the deputations and attending individuals be seated first.
OK， 喺度好歡迎各位嘅團體代表。
Welcome. Today, this meeting is to receive your views on District Council's Ordinance Amendment of Schedules 1 and 3, Order 2013. Here, I'd like to remind you that in front of you, there is a microphone and an earpiece. You can put on the earpiece. Channel 0 is the floor channel, Channel 1 is Cantonese, and Channel 2 is English. At this meeting, I'll allow you to speak 3 minutes each. Some deputations and members of the public have sent in their written submissions. We've received them. Here, I'd also like to remind you that in a moment, your remarks will not be protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. In other words, you have to be responsible for the contents of your remarks, and you won't be protected by the ordinance. I'll invite you to speak first, and then I'll invite the administration to respond to your views. Our members may also want to have a two-direction discussion with you. Members may want to seek clarification from you on your remarks. All right. So we'll now receive your views. I'll follow the sequence here. First, Mr. Leung Tung Wing, Principal of Tung Group of Hospitals, Lee Ching D Memorial College. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here, first of all, I have to thank LegCo members for arranging this platform for us to have an exchange, a face-to-face exchange with the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau on delineation of DCCAs. We're not against the delineation, but the delineation will cause our school to be transferred to Wan Chai district, and we're worried about a number of uncertainties. We've already passed a paper to the LegCo Secretariat. I understand that it has already been tabled. I won't go into the detailed contents. Well, I just want to mention a few points. Now, these are the views of our stakeholders, not the views of myself as the principal of the school. I've consulted the Tung Group of Hospitals, the Corporate School Management Committee, and parents and teachers. They all oppose the transfer of our school to Wan Chai district under the delineation proposal. The chairman of the PTA as well as our chairman of the Alumni Association have also come here to show their support. Well, all along we belong to Eastern District, although we also enrolled students from Wan Chai. From page 1 of our paper, you can see the huge discrepancies between the two sets of figures. Eastern District parents trust us a great deal, but Wan Chai District parents don't quite know us. Do Wan Chai students want to come to our school? It's premature to say. So our Alumni Association has also been consulted. We focus on teaching young persons and students well. We assist them in their learning. We have spent a great deal of time on setting up a network amongst our students. I've been in office for 4 years already, and I spent a great deal of time on community liaison. I believe nowadays that's what schools should do. Our colleagues teaching as well as the school's administration may also be affected by this transfer. A minor change on your part may cause a great deal more effort on the part of the school in order to attain the same effect. Next, Tung Group of Hospitals, Li Ching D Memorial College Parent-Teacher Association, Ms. Ku Sao-chan, their chairlady. Thank you, Chairman. Parents are saddened and students are shocked by this proposed transfer. Apparently, we're being slapped on the face and being betrayed. We've been here for so long. Why should we be transferred to another district out of no reason? If the siblings of our students are to be transferred to another district, then they cannot go to school at the same time. They may have to adapt to the new environment in Wan Chai. Some parents reacted very strongly. They asked whether they are being bullied. They asked whether they're disadvantaged. Some parents' reaction is like this. They ask why they're not being respected. Why should we have education? Every country would like to be strong, so it emphasizes education. Our state leaders, community leaders, school principals, teachers and parents would like to set good examples. If we're not being respected, how will our children respect us in future? So please respect us and pay attention to our wishes. Within the government, there should be a whole series of ancillary measures to assist us to continue to develop in Eastern District. So please let us stay in Eastern. We don't want you to deal a blow to our students' trust in you. filibustering, Occupy Central, protests and demonstrations. Well, we don't want our students to get engaged in such activities in future. We want them to serve our country and live well. And we would like to have a government that respects public opinion. I hope that through your action, you can pay more attention and give more consideration to the wishes of parents. Don't force this policy upon us. Don't let us have this feeling. I'm speaking on behalf of the Parent-Teacher Association. I've consulted many parents, so I speak. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Koo. Next, Tung Group of Hospitals, Li Ching D Memorial College Alumni Association. Mr. Wong Hing, their chairman. Thank you, Chairman. In this incident, the Alumni Association is angry. Why? Because most of our alumni live in Eastern District. Li Ching D Memorial College has always had a very good school culture. The children and even grandchildren of our alumni have been studying in our college. Apparently, our alumni in Eastern District did not know this message and have not been consulted. I have been the chairman of the Alumni Association since 2006. Ever since Mr. Leung Tung-wing became the principal, and many of our alumni worked in Eastern District. They served as PCROs, liaison officers, etc. And via our Alumni Association, we had established a lot more contact with Eastern District and had been engaged in their activities, like soccer matches and other activities in Eastern District. Our networks are all in Eastern District. Under your proposed change, we may have difficulties in adapting to the new environment. Our Alumni Association has held our AGM, and all alumni unanimously considered that we should stay in Eastern District. Next, from Labour Party, we have their Vice Chairman, Mr. Chang Si-lut. To incorporate Tin Hau and Victoria Park into Wan Chai District is unimaginable due to urban planning, transport development, and so forth. Many old district boundaries are already outdated. However, it seems that the administration only pays attention to the boundary between Eastern District and Wan Chai. Why is the government so short-sighted? Before we had a through Sai Sha Road, we relied on titles to go to Tai Po Ao Pier. Now the outlying islands in Sai Kung can go to Ma Liu Shui. And in New Territories North, Sai Sha Road and the whole Ma On Shan have been integrated. Living styles have changed. Same for Lantau Island and Castle Peak Road areas like Ching Long Tau. Even after the commissioning of the North Lantau Expressway, Ching had not been integrated with the Islands District. So, the same didn't just happen to rural areas. In Ching, like King Hill Road, is so near to Mei Fu. The residents use the leisure and cultural facilities of Mei Fu. It's just a 10-minute journey away, nearer to Kwai Chung. Lai Court, Lai Yan Court, etc. have not been redelineated. For example, Anderson Road in Kwun Tong Road has served as a boundary between Sai Kung and Kwun Tong. Sao Mau Ping, Si Shun, etc. should be amalgamated. But if the boundary is unchanged, they may go to Sai Kung. So the living circle of residents may be detached from reality. We know that facilities are related to district boundaries, and residents emphasize the integrity of geographical locations. This time, the administration only focuses on Eastern and Wan Chai. In the community, there are suspicions that this is something political that will add to the worries of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. We now have Dr. Jennifer CHOW, member of the Eastern District Council. Now, I belong to the Victoria Park District. I have heard from the school, from the Tin Hau District. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any representative from the Tin Hau District. Now, I understand what they have been saying, and I understand the feelings of parents and the school. Now, but we are looking at it from the whole community's angle. Now, of course, the school network is one factor we have to consider. In our district consultation meetings, yes, we worried about changes to the catchment area of schools. Now, when we consulted in the Victoria Park area, the result is that people are generally in favor of the move because times are changing. And it is important that different districts can fuse together, particularly when we are contiguous areas. And this point has been raised numerous times in the past, how the two areas can be amalgamated in order to have better development. So from this angle, this 2 DCCA scheme is helpful. And this is also the view of the public. So these are the generally supportive views that I received from the consultation exercises. Now, but coming back to the school network issue, now whether you're talking about provision of hospital beds or social welfare, now they have already been included into the Wan Chai area. But then for the school, it's not yet the case. So I think this the government can do something about this. Now, if we are really people-oriented, it is important that we be practical and pragmatic and people-oriented. Now, the businesses are moving eastwards, and there are hotels and catering outlets and other businesses, leading to problems such as traffic or facilities and the lack of the facilities. Now, so the government, when they are doing the planning, they should look at the need of the districts when the districts develop, and to do some long-term planning from there. So I'm speaking on behalf of the people, and I support the move by the government with the rider that there should be necessary attention paid to various issues, but particularly the school network area. Next, we have Mr. YU Kai-chuen. I am a resident of the Victoria Park area in Heng Fat Street. Now, my children, about 20 years ago, we started living there. And I had to pick schools for my children. So I am in favor of a clear delineation of the school districts. So when it comes to choosing school network or medical network, we are right in the middle, right at the boundary. Now sometimes it's, well, we don't belong to Causeway Bay, and we don't belong to North Point. Now, but if there's a clearer boundary drawn, I would like to see ourselves being moved to Wan Chai and Causeway Bay. Now, because for medical services and its provision, now I'm a retiree, very often we can have chronic diseases requiring repeated medical attention. If we are moved to the Eastern District, we will have to wait a long time before getting medical treatment. On the other hand, if we belong to the Wan Chai area or the Tang Shiu Kin area, now if you look at the street where I'm residing, even the clerical staff are not too sure where I belong to. Now I think with a new boundary, I would like to belong to Wan Chai district. Now, coming back to the Victoria Park issue, they have a new swimming pool. There are many good things about the swimming pool, but there are also downsides as well, even though a lot of money has been spent on its construction. So if you look at facilities, if you want to reflect your views to the district councillor, you discover that the whole of the Victoria Park does not come under the ambit of the Victoria Park district councillor. Of course, the councillor was being very helpful and relayed my views to the relevant party. Now, if it's not the Eastern District, then I am not too confident in raising these issues. Now, on the school arrangement and the residence arrangement, I believe a more average arrangement will allow me to belong to the Wan Chai area. Next, we have LI Yuk-lan, Madam Lee. I'm in Shui Shing Street, belonging to Tin Hao. I'm already the second generation. My father would usually say our address is in Causeway Bay or Wan Chai, very convenient. And if we need to see a medical doctor, we will go to Rattanji Hospital, and we receive our medical treatment in Wan Chai or do our shopping there as well. Now, Tin Hao has a lot of elderly people, but for Wan Chai, there are many tenants there. And if we are drawn or move to the Wan Chai area, it's very appropriate. There's a park there, so if we move there, now in Causeway Bay you have a Home Affairs department. There's a market there. It's also called Causeway Bay, but many people go there from Wan Chai. So they have department stores there, and we have catering outlets, and so we can use one another's facilities. So if we move to the Wan Chai area, it is quite desirable, and we also face north or northwest, so the orientation is good and it's pretty convenient overall. So so my father's generation or my generation, we grew up in this area, and we had a happy time and like to stay in this Wan Chai area. Thank you, Madam Lee. Next we have Mr. Ching from the Civic Party. I'm from the Civic Party. Now, the proportion between Eastern and Wan Chai is disproportionate, so it's only reasonable to do the adjustment here. But after the exercise, you have the number of seats from 11 to 13, and then from the Eastern District 37 to 35. Still the difference is threefold. Now, some would say that, okay, superficially there should be 2 districts or to include North Point and so on. Now, but what is even more important is the resources given to the 18 districts. Now, it is not based on the size or scale of the districts. Now, whether you are doing it in 2 districts or even 6 districts, the Eastern District is at least twice as big as Wan Chai. So what are you going to do about balancing resources? Now, from the residents' angle, we know that resources have been allocated to the smaller constituencies, but this may not be fair to a big constituencies. Now, you have, let's say, 17,000 people for a small constituency. Now, if you want to be fair, then you should look at the overall proportion of the small constituencies versus the bigger ones. And this will only enhance the sense of belonging, as well as have a fair distribution of resources, and also a long-term solution. Now, finally, if memory serves, we've heard from past meetings and when the Deputy Secretary made answers about the 3 schools, whether they should move from one district to another, and consultation should be done, and well, there should be a chance to raise objections during the consultation. Now, if the parents of those schools or teachers and students were to raise objections, will the Bureau respect their choice? Also, what sort of follow-up should be done? So can we have some answer from the administration, please? Next, we have Tung Community Network Association, Mr. Kwok. Thank you, Chair. Now, after the handover, now the SAR government has done a lot of work to the district council, and it really does need some overhauling. Now, looking at the background information, the DC was classified as a consultation, but after the cancelling of 2 municipal councils, the LegCo has to handle a lot of daily livelihood issues. But in 2010, we have the other changes for the constitution. But it seems that even though attention is being given to the grassroots, not enough has been done, and not enough delegation of powers given to the DCs. Now, if you cancel the appointed members of DCs and also to redraw the boundary, now I welcome the move initially, but now from the Eastern District you break it up into 2 smaller ones. The reasons being, for Wan Chai there are only 11 members and there should be more. Okay, 2 more, but I'm surprised. It's like the presentation consultation document. I really don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. In the last meeting, and the government tells us that a lot of work has been done, and you've also confirmed this, but there's nothing coming out of it. And the reasons are not clear. It only says that the DCCA is the best possible solution, but are you really doing your best? And then when pressed, you come up with more answers. For example, the school network. These are only technical areas that can be solved, and there is no change needed. And when in fact you have more than 2 years to handle the issue, what is important is whether the government does have the ambition or intention to rearrange the DC's role. Now, there must be practical reason and pragmatic reason to do it. Now, Hong Kong's population is pretty stable, and there are 4 district councils. And looking at the future 22 years, there will be some sort of a development, but the change in population will not be as big as other areas. Now, we must plan for the future. Now, if you regroup the district council and looking at the present progress, it's going to take years. And it will never be done, as far as I'm concerned.
選舉辦法。
As I told Mr. Tam the other day, we may be more focused if we have a 2-day consultation. Whom did you refer to when you mentioned Mr. Tam? And what about 2-day consultation? Maybe you can clarify in a moment. Next, Mr. Chung Ip-sung, Assistant Education Services Secretary for Secondary Schools from the Education Division, Tung Group of Hospitals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In future, because of the redelineation of district boundaries, the school nets will also be changed. Tung Group of Hospitals, our School Management Committee, and Parent-Teacher Association as well as Alumni Association have been consulted. They unanimously oppose the proposal. Lee Ching-di Memorial College is very popular in the district. Their enrollment rate is much higher than their counterparts in Wan Chai. I've already submitted the data to LegCo for consideration. If the school net is to be changed, the school will have to re-establish its community network, thus greatly adding to the workload and pressure of the teachers and school principal. That's not conducive to the long-term development of the school. Not just senior primary school students will be affected. P1 students will also be affected. If the school net is to be adjusted, it should only take effect in 6 years' time, such that Eastern District parents can still choose Lee Ching-di Memorial College. The government should not hastily transfer that college to Wan Chai District, thus taking away the opportunities of parents to choose our college. Besides, our college has already established a very deep network in Eastern District, and we've also put in resources to assist the school to develop. Therefore, we would like to have sustainable development. So we do not want our school net to be changed as a result of this redelineation of district boundary. Now we have Mr. Lee Chi-sing, the school principal of Concordia Lutheran School in North Point. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of Concordia Lutheran School of North Point, I'd like to urge LegCo members to consider a whole basket of factors. This is not an isolated incident. As a member of the education sector, I'd like to say something about education. The existing school networks are arranged on a district basis. This principle is very correct. This is to facilitate students to go to school and to choose their schools. I don't want this change of district boundary to affect that principle. If the administrative districts are to be changed in boundary, thus leading to transfer of schools from one district to another, I would like the administration to reduce the harmful effect on our students as far as possible. Now, this morning, for example, I stood at the entrance of the school to watch the bus operations. During the rush hours, buses usually come from Eastern District at 2 to 3 minute intervals. And then in Wan Chai District, I don't know whether the past few days are special. I only saw a bus once every 10 or more minutes. For our students, that may pose difficulties. If our school is to be transferred to Wan Chai, what about the existing students in Eastern District? For such minute details, I'm afraid that officials and councillors may not have paid attention to them. The reinstatement of school nets sounds very simple, but to the parents, teachers, and students is a big matter. In the past 8 to 10 years, we've not proactively enrolled students from Wan Chai. So we're in a more difficult position than Lee Ching-di Memorial College. We tried our very best, but we would like the administration to consider all factors in detail and depth. If we are to go to Wan Chai, we're just like a new school. What about our resources? We would like to have better facilities to do community work and to develop our school. I think we have to think more about these aspects. So I'd like to put in front of you our difficulties so that you can conduct more in-depth discussions on this boundary delineation exercise. Thank you, Mr. Lee. All the attendees have already spoken. Deputy Secretary, any response to the remarks of the deputations and individuals? Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to thank the speakers just now. Perhaps I should respond as a whole because some of the issues raised were rather similar. A number of speakers mentioned their difficulties as a result of the proposed change in school nets. From the Education Bureau, we understand what roughly will happen. As the school principals said just now, the secondary and primary school nets are basically district-based. And there's quite a consensus in the community that we would like to facilitate students to go to school. And this district-based principle is supported. As for student enrollment systems, they also based on this district-based principle. Under the proposed changes, 3 public sector schools will be affected. Here we have the school principals from 2 of these schools, Lee Ching-di Memorial College and Concordia Lutheran School of North Point. The other school is North Point Government Primary School, Cloudview Road. Well, basically, we distribute schools according to the 18 administrative districts. We have 18 districts in Hong Kong, but 36 school nets. Well, basically, they follow the administrative districts with just a little bit more details. As for the proposed changes, for secondary schools, if we observe the district-based principle, when these proposed changes take effect, the 2 secondary schools will be transferred from Eastern District to Wan Chai District. As for the commencement date of the proposals, if you refer to the amendment order, you see that the order will take effect in 2016, so there's still time for maneuvering. That leads me to another point. In fact, the Education Bureau has received from the 2 secondary schools certain views, and they're already doing follow-up work. As far as I know, for school place allocation for secondary schools, they actually have a committee, and at the end of November, the school's views have already been preliminarily reflected to that committee. At the next meeting of that committee, which is to take place in March, more in-depth discussions will be conducted. Probably on paper, they've not been able to follow up so soon, such that the schools do not feel that follow-up action is being taken. For secondary school places allocation, that committee will consider all details. So there is a mechanism to follow up on the school's views. Same for the primary school. If it is to be transferred from one district to another, there's also a coordinating committee for primary school place allocation. And that committee will also convene meetings. For allocation of school places, we've just heard the worries from the two school principals. May I give you some additional background information as the two school principals are clear about them? There are actually two stages in allocation of places. First of all, for the discretionary places, they are not subject to the delineation of districts. Any student can apply to any school. And for the central allocation stage, some students may be subject to the school net restrictions, but not all. Of course, to which district a secondary school belongs may affect certain students, but not all secondary 1 places are affected by the transfer. For school places, I heard from the two school principals that they might not be opposing the proposed change in administrative districts in principle. It's just that if there are changes to the school networks, they'd like to receive assistance to help them get adapted to the new system. So I'll go back and discuss with the Education Bureau to see what assistance measures can be adopted for the schools. And then there are some major issues like the district council system, the demarcation of districts, the electoral methods, and so forth. Now, all these have already been explained at past meetings. These are major changes and are not the objectives of this amendment order. For these major issues, they'd better be explored on other occasions. Just now, district councillors like Dr. Jennifer CHOW told us that some residents supported this proposed change in district boundary, and that's in line with the views that we received previously. Thank you, Deputy Secretary. The floor is now open to panel members, 5 minutes each. Kenneth Chansett Ho, Leung Chi Chung, Starry Lee, Sin Chung Kai. All right. Dr. Kenneth Chan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to thank my colleagues because I'm also from the education sector. Thank you for coming to the LegCo to clearly explain your views to us. If you don't come today, we may feel that this proposed change is just a slight amendment involving the shifting of district boundaries. A few weeks ago, well, thanks to the school principal of Lee Ching D Memorial College, he sent a submission to me much earlier, and I had a chance to read it, such that I learned of more details. In fact, not just one school was affected. 3 schools are affected. The views are clear and loud. It's regrettable that we don't see your views on the website. We only read that there are a few opposing submissions. So it's very good that we have this opportunity to discuss these issues. The government now wants to convince LegCo members that we should support the demarcation of boundary first, and then we move on to the details later. Apparently, this is not your aspiration today. You are not telling us that you agree to the proposed change, and you can sit down and discuss with them later. I think your views are clear. You would like to remain in the school net of Eastern District. So it's not like what the Deputy Secretary said just now. You're not telling us that you would sit down with them and discuss further only later. Councillors cannot allow this to happen. So I would like to ask whether we can delink the two issues. For administrative purposes, because of district council seats, 2 DCCAs are to be transferred from Eastern to Wan Chai. That is administration. But what about school nets, livelihood issues, welfare facilities, etc.? Can they be delinked? The government needs more time to convince us, more resources may be required. We may need more chances to understand more the issues. So don't draw a deadline.
Because if you have a deadline and then you discuss all the other implications, that is not something we want to see. So I would like to see Mr. Leung giving us the promise that 2016 is not a deadline, but then there should be some delinking or unpegging. And then we look at the issue again. If you ask the Civic Party, I have reservation, because if all these demarcation would involve the schools moving over and there are parent-teacher association objecting, schools objecting, now this will mean that at the end of the day, I will have to object to this, and I don't think this is what the government wants. Now the best thing is really to delink the whole issue. And of course, I'd like to ask my colleagues in the education sector here. Now, the government has been saying that this is only a small problem, and then you can have your own way of recruiting students and so on. Now, is it really as simple as has been painted by the Deputy Secretary? Who would like to respond to this question? Is it Mr. Leung? Now, for our central arrangement of the allocation or the discretionary allocation, now you have, let's say for the Eastern District, now all our resources, our network belong to the Eastern District. So our parents and our primary schools would know us better. But for Wan Chai, okay, I have been accepting some of the students, but not too many. So they do not really know our school very much. They don't really know about Li Ching Di and Memorial College. Now, and in the submission that we made, there is a big discrepancy in the number of applications we receive from the two districts. Now, is it possible that in 1 or 2 years' time that we can, increase our reputation? Well, it's not something I can say for sure. I'm sorry, the speaker's not coming through. Now, for going to other districts, but if we don't know you, of course, we won't choose any schools in your district. For example, we won't choose any schools in Kowloon Tong. Now, we as a school management may not have a very clear principle, but when we lay down our policies, we have clear objectives. I agree with Mr. Chan. Just make it a fait accompli, and then think about the other implication to see what improvements can be made. Now, I share his worry. I would like to see clearer promises given to us first. Ms. Sit Ho. I'd like to thank the representatives coming here, sharing your views with us today. Now I would like to criticize the government. We had a first meeting in November the 20th, but now it's totally 20 days, and we asked about the school network, all the other social welfare facilities, medical provisions, and so on. We asked about how these would be affected as a result of the redrawing of the boundary. Now, you are giving us the answer only by noon today. It's taking them 20 days. our paper has been given to them long time ago. I thought I left out some papers, but we only had this 12 o'clock today. And there are still questions not answered. For example, on medical services or traffic or ambulance service, municipal services, environmental factors, police services, whether they would be affected. But now school principal tells us that there are problems not solved. Every 2 or 3 minutes you have buses coming from the Eastern District. But for one child, there are only 10 minutes per service. So this is a late submission and a wrong submission. So I think the government department must be condemned. Now, no matter how rushed the meetings are, you have to give us papers at least 48 hours beforehand so that our secretariat can have time, so that we can have time and our legal advisor can have time. But now, are you counting on us giving you the vote? We aren't even getting enough information. Now, I'll save some time to ask questions of the schools. Now, of course, the schools know more about allocation of seats than the government. Now, I'd like to thank the Li Ching D school for giving us the information about taking in students. Now, will schools be killed, as it were, as a result of not having enough students? So I agree with Mr. Chan, there must be delinking first. Let the schools stay in the original net. And it is not like that it's a life and death issue. Now, as has been pointed out, there are traffic implications, better and more frequent bus service in the Eastern District, not so in the Wan Chai area. You are making the move and turning a blind eye to all these differences. You only tell us that there are only several objections, but the several objections are not from individuals. They represent a lot of individuals, a lot of schools. So, Mr. Leung, I'm asking the question, can you let the schools remain in the Eastern District? And we have our other members sharing our views already. Now, we have basic differences now, and I'm not going to give you the vote, but at least you should give us the promise that these schools can stay where they are. Thank you for your question. Now, the papers are submitted late, and I apologize for that. As to the future arrangement of schools, now the Education Bureau has 2 committees looking at the issue, and I cannot answer on their behalf. I can say earnestly that we will definitely reflect the school's concern to the Education Bureau. And whenever schools are affected, or if there's any fine-tuning needed, they will do their best to help schools cope with the changes. So obviously, in your consultation, you did not consult the schools. So when can you come back and tell us that the schools will not be affected by this move? Chair, I have already said I cannot speak on behalf of other committees. So I'm asking you when. I'm not asking you to do it tomorrow. Now, for the 2 committees responsible, now whether they would allow the schools to remain in Eastern District, I cannot give you any answer. But have you consulted them in the consultation? No, we did not. So that was not a full consultation. Now, moving the schools in a district is a bigger issue than moving house. Now the schools have been telling us the facts. There may be other implications, and it seems that the consultation is not comprehensive enough. You only consulted the district councils, but now other issues will emerge, and not just from schools, maybe from other services. Now, in the past, we used the boundary as a geographical limit. So everything is based on the boundary and its demarcation. But if you do some reshuffling, then the people there will be affected, maybe becoming orphans, and nobody will take care of them and their needs. Now, it's not really done frequently, I don't think. Now, it was many years ago when the 19 districts became 18. But now it seems that things are being rather rusty. And this particular demarcation or moving of the boundary is causing a lot of problems. It may be good for the district councils, but of course I'm not in favor of just having these two councils or the two districts. In fact, many people may be affected. Now, I think the consultation has to be all-embracing. Of course, the school principals are very important ones to consult, and there are other Kai-fong associations and individuals that you have to consult. Otherwise, when problems emerge, people will have questions about the whole rationale of the withdrawing of the boundaries. Now, you may have a transitional period, and it's going to be very difficult for parents. Now, for example, if I'm in Yuen Long, how can I know about schools in the Northern District? So the same problem applies to schools here. Now, the school net, is it the case that they would be belonging to the same district and the same net? Now, but in the North and New Territories, the 4 districts would come under the same net, depending on the needs of the students. So if one school moves from one area to another, it can create confusion. Now, I also agree with Dr. Jennifer CHOW. Now, sometimes you have, big district councils and small district councils, and things are not entirely fair. Now, you have to speak in district councils and reflect the needs of the district. If the district council is either too big or too small, it will result in unfair distribution of resources. So, try to even things out. Try to do that, because it's not easy, in the Eastern District. Now, maybe in the Wan Chai area, you only have 13 councillors, and you have short meetings of only 2 hours. But members in the Eastern District, because they have so much on their plate, they would have very long meetings. Mr. Leung. Thank you for your views. Now, as to the impact on the residents, now since our last meeting, we have consulted the relevant departments again, because when we consulted the district councils, we already consulted them for the first time. And so we did our second round of consultation to ascertain whether residents will be affected. And the results given to us is that they will not be affected. Now, of course, you've listened to the views of the school heads, and you can say that because the school net and the administrative boundaries, they overlap, and that's why we have some problems here.
In fact, they also have a system to handle school-related matters. As we learned just now, that committee has already started work. So there is a system to handle the issues raised. So for the delineation of district boundaries, it should not affect the residents too much. Ms. Tari Lee and then Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I have to thank the deputations. For boundary demarcation for administrative districts, there is a history behind this. The size of our districts varies vastly. So as our colleague mentioned, the existing situation is not ideal. But it's also very difficult to reach consensus amongst all sectors of the community. Many members of the public don't know which district is which until elections come. I think Eastern and Wan Chai residents don't know where they are when they go in and out of their own districts. So the boundaries exist, but members of the public are not too aware of them. The distribution of hospitals does not follow the administrative districts as well. Same for police service. So most services are not distributed in accordance with the administrative districts. There is this issue of distribution of resources and other considerations. For school nets, apparently, from what we heard just now, they have to follow the administrative districts. There's huge room for discussion then, because other services are not directly linked with the administrative districts. Secondly, to be straightforward, knowledge about a school is very closely related to enrollment. Now you propose this transfer, and then enrollment plans may be affected. I think we should understand the actual circumstances. You should honestly tell the Education Bureau. The school nets also have their history. If you ask me, they're too small. If you ask the parents will tell you that they may not just consider the nearest school. They also consider traffic and transport. Traffic is very convenient nowadays. So, it's just that we have not been changing the boundaries of our school nets. So I think you really have to go back and talk to the Education Bureau. Administratively, this time you need to make an adjustment. Just now, the Kai-fong said that this proposed change may have its merits in terms of administration, but the schools have other views. So you really have to work out an alternative with them. I really do not see why school nets have to follow the administrative districts. Look at healthcare services, medical services, police services. Many services do not follow the administrative districts. So may I know from the Bureau, how far has it communicated with the Education Bureau? Mr. Leung, Deputy Secretary. Well, it's only in the past few days that we heard these views more clearly. Earlier, we already submitted certain views to the Education Bureau. In the past few days, we were engaged in closer discussion with the Education Bureau. Upcoming, I will discuss further details with the Education Bureau and the schools concerned to see what measures can be adopted to set their minds at ease. We'll actively follow up on this issue. Mr. Sin Chung Kai? First of all, I have to say that if you cannot settle this, I'll oppose the proposed amendment. Any change must be people-oriented, and any change must improve the existing situation. You must not have regression. Will you say that the Victoria Park DCCA is too small? Tin Hau is also too small? But if you don't change them, nobody will complain. If you want to change, have a larger scale change. Maybe you should move 6 to 7 DCCAs to Wan Chai. Then you have a more balanced number on both sides, around 18 to 19. A change from 11 to 13 does not matter much. In the past 10 odd years, it's already like this. Nobody complained. I've never heard anybody say that they want to move. But now you propose this change, at least the 3 schools are complaining. The friend from Labour Party made it very well. Certain DCCAs are not changed. So, politics comes first. Is it that you want Ms. or Dr. Jennifer Chow to become the district council chairman in future? I don't see any objective merit in this change. You fail to convince me what merit there is in this change. Whom does this change serve? I clearly see these 3 schools objecting. Parents, teachers, alumni, thousands of them are protesting. At least thousands of them. Dr. Kenneth Chan said there are more. Of course, some of the Kai-fongs here support the change. Will they have their own analysis? But obviously, several thousand people are objecting to your change. Alumni, parents, teachers, students do not agree. I'd like to ask the government this. When will you give us a satisfactory reply on the delineation of school nets and education? Deputy Secretary, as I said, after this meeting, I will as soon as possible to talk to the Education Bureau and the schools concerned to see what measures there can be to set everybody's mind at ease. I have to criticize you. Well, Mr. Leung, you said that you had conducted a long consultation, but you also said that it's only in the past few days that you heard these opposing views. What happened? If this panel did not invite the schools to come, what would have happened? These opposing views will not be heard. There's no avenue for them to air their grievances. I don't know how the government conducted the consultation. It's such an important change. Parties that should be consulted were not consulted. You did not come up with serious views. And the LegCo is almost to pass the order. Should we postpone the scrutiny of the order so that you can do further consultation? Deputy Secretary, as soon as possible, talk to the parties concerned. Mr. Wong, I'd like to thank councillors for their support. I would like to reiterate that we're not opposing the delineation of DC boundaries. We oppose the redelineation of the boundary of school nets. Number 1, there's no consultation at all. Number 2, for the parents and alumni, if their children want to have a choice for the discretionary places, they have to compete with a lot of people. In the same district, chance is much higher for them to get a place. I'd like to thank Mr. Lam for clarifying his position. He's not opposing the proposed redelineation of DC boundaries. It's just that he would like to have more arrangements on the school nets. Is this a question of IC first or chicken first? Both Wan Chai and district have students, but you belong to Eastern District, so for the discretionary places, you'll get more students. If you move to Wan Chai, you will, of course, have to adapt to the new situation. It's just like Hong Kong situation. Maybe we need not give you 50 years. Can we give you 5 years for adaptation? Secondly, some of our colleagues mentioned delinkage. Is this feasible? If not, can we have an overlapping boundary? That is, they belong to both districts. And then can they be given an adaptation period, maybe 3 years or 5 years? Because this order will only take effect in 2 years' time. So maybe we give them 3 more years. After all, Hong Kong is a very small place. After all, the boundaries are artificially delineated. From my office, I just walk a few steps and I'll enter Jennifer Child's district. Same for Victoria Park DCCA and Tin Hau. So if the affected schools can have their worries and doubts reduced to a minimum, it will be better. As mentioned just now, hospital services, welfare services, medical services, etc. are not district-based. So for the sake of adaptation, can we give the schools more ancillary resources? Mr. Sin Chung Kai said he didn't see any merit in this proposed change. Well, subjectively, the schools have worries, but objectively, in terms of resource allocation, apparently, Wan Chai has more resources and less seats. So this change will be conducive to resource allocation. I have to declare that my spouse is in Wan Chai. Can the Deputy Secretary consider what I said? Give them a transitional arrangement. And can you consider overlapping instead of delinking? Deputy Secretary? It seems that the principal would like to say something. Maybe you speak first. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your views. First of all, one viewpoint mentioned is important. Apparently, we heard that for this amendment order, members do not oppose it in principle. The question lies with the school nets. All along, they've been pegged with the administrative districts. So now, members have a worry which affects the 2 secondary schools under discussion. I'd like councillors to understand the situation. I'd like to thank Mr. Porter for his opinion. Personally, in my own mind, I'm considering how I can discuss with the 2 schools and the Education Bureau to find ways and means to assist the schools. That is, what can we do to assist them in terms of adaptation, for example, by giving them a longer period of adaptation so that they can establish their own networks in Wan Chai. So I'd like to thank Mr. Porter for his opinion. We'll actively follow up on his suggestions. School principal, thank you. Today I come here precisely for the objective of what Mr. Porter suggested. I dare not suggest that the government changes its mind on the delineation of district boundaries. Adaptation period is important because you ask us to go to a new district. We need to adapt to the new environment. This school is still there as an old school, but it's going to move to a new district. For me, as I said, I never did anything in Wan Chai. I think you shouldn't be too rigid in your boundaries. Because once the boundary is set, I have to take in students from my own district only, not from my neighboring district. And all schools and school places are distributed in accordance with the same principle. So if the two schools are moved to Wan Chai, we can only take in students from Wan Chai. So to lengthen the adaptation period is important. If I go to Wan Chai to do publicity or promotion, I have no cause for doing so. So we have to wait till the amendment order is published.
Okay, let me see. I have one member wanting to speak for second round. Before I do that, I'd like to ask the deputations. Now, we have heard about the worry about the school net. This is a very practical problem because schools having been in the district for so long, and you have also the relationship with the primary school. So that is something we have to consider. So we can certainly think more along these lines. Can they stay in the area or to be given a longer grace period or transitional period? But of course, it has to start counting after the law comes into effect. You cannot say that you start the grace period right now, because at the moment you are still in the Eastern District, and you have to wait until you're formally belonging to the Wan Chai District. Now, we're talking about 2 to 3 schools. Now, it may not affect the government schools that much. So is it the case that they definitely have to move over to the other district? Or is it the case that you can have a 6-year period for the transition? So that is something we have to consider from the school's perspective. Now, if you move to the Wan Chai net, the schools will have changed net entirely. Well, not necessarily, because the parents may not think so. We have to have a clearer response. We will need that, and we can then answer the school's questions. Now, the point was made about more traffic or more buses coming from the Eastern District being more frequent than from the opposite direction. Now, is it that after the move there should be more frequent services from Wan Chai? In other words, more eastbound traffic. Now, you cannot expect this to take place right away, because at the moment the schools belong where they are. Even if you increase the number of eastbound buses, there won't be any patrons. Now, are there other transport issues that you can remind us about? Now, I think for the traffic and transport side, now from Cloudview Road all the way to Bremer Hill, there are more students coming from the Eastern District. So from North Point up to Cloudview Road, and then Tin Hau Temple Road, and then Bremer Hill Road, all the way up. Now, but from Wan Chai, the Lai Tak Estate, there are fewer buses, only 2, I think, mainly 2 buses from Wan Chai and Central. That's route number 25 and 25A. Now, if you increase the frequency or routes, the whole arrangement may be affected, because about in mid-levels and all the way up, there will be a lot of congestion, because in Bremer Hill Road there are other schools and international schools with many private cars, and there are traffic congestions, very serious. So even after making the move, if you were to increase routes or increase frequency, you cannot resolve the problem. It's because of the congestion, you can't do very much. Now, you cannot cut the buses from the Eastern District, and the bus companies use old buses, and many of them will break down along the way, especially when they're going uphill. And we saw students having to walk up the hill. Now, why am I raising this traffic problem? It looks very simple, but in fact it is not. Now, we have heard that the Deputy Secretary will consider the issue. Okay, you see the 2 schools, but there are many students there. We do not really object to the move, but there are practical problems we have to consider. And also the transitional period and so on. We know, Mr. Leung, that you promised to reflect the view. Yes, please do that. Because in the Central and Western District, there was a time when schools were killed, and then some students have to go all the way to Tin Shui Wai. But in fact, it is like moving us to another district. So administratively, we have been moved, even though our geographical location remains the same. Now, we will have to take care of students from Wan Chai and parents from Wan Chai. It is even more difficult than moving to a new district altogether. So I'm just letting you know, okay, you are big shots thinking about big issues. You may have forgotten our small potatoes and our small problems. So what I want to say is, now as Mr. Sin said, moving this district, if it helps us, then that's good. But even if there are no advantages, then we mustn't suffer as a result. Now, we've heard from Mr. Leung that now moving the school to another net is a fait accompli, and you're only trying to help us to cope with the change. Now, you have not consulted us, and that's point number 1. And if you already have an answer before the consultation, then that is not a real consultation. Now, I think at this stage, I cannot answer on behalf of the Education Bureau. I know this may not be the answer you like to hear, but this is my very truthful answer. Now, the views that you express, I will definitely follow up on them and will personally speak to the Education Bureau to see how the school's worries can be allayed and to find pragmatic solutions. Mr. Chen, thank you, Chair. Now, I think we would like to make clear what is delinking or linking to 2 districts. Now, you cannot get away from the net. You have to belong to one net or another. Now, what I mean by delinking is not to delinking from all the net. No, this is not what I mean, but only to delink it from this particular issue we're discussing, so you can stay in the eastern net and to find a way that mutually available, whether it's transitional or not, doesn't matter. But you must be able to respect the education sector. Now, there are 3 schools. Now, the government schools representatives not here now, but of course they dare not come up, and if they come up here, they dare not say no. So this is a question we have yet to uncover. From the education point of view, now we want to help the parents and students, and there are also traffic and transport issues. Of course, Mr. Leung, we understand that you are from Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, and what you can do is to listen very carefully to our views. But if you ask us, Civic Party, you try to delink the two things. Now, you put education on one side first, and if you cannot do that, you cannot segregate that, then I begin to worry. Even if you have 2 years of transition, what can be done? What can schools do to get to know the new district, get to know the new parents from that new district? And you have to do a lot of explanation. So the transition can be pretty complicated. Now, I hope the school principals don't worry too much about big shots or small potatoes. We are all Hong Kong people, and we want to work for the benefit of Hong Kong. And I think Ms. Sitho is right in saying that now, you see, I have asked a whole series of questions, but only get a short answer of about 2 pages. Now, I believe this is Mr. Leung's ambit. Now, in our coming meetings, we need more time. Now, if the delinking can be done, then things can be worked out. Because otherwise, for your sake, I will have to cast a vote of objection. And at the moment, we're still negotiating or bargaining, but I think we have to make ourselves clear. Now, we have representatives here today, and I think we have to ask them what concrete views you have, and we will continue our dialogue with the government. Now, Mr. Sin, I'd like to ask the schools several possibilities. One, to move to another district. Of course, there is another option to maintain the status quo, and the third option is change to the district, but belonging to 2 nets, both Eastern and Wan Chai, and just for you to choose. So while you're here, I'd like to ask you, can you belong to 2 nets? I don't know whether this is like straddling between 2 districts. Will this minimize the impact? I'd like to hear from the schools. Mr. Leung, Mr. Sin, you may or may not know. Now, to move to another district, the Education Bureau would have the Wan Chai district looking after us. Now, for our school, we have students from 5 districts, including the outlying islands. Now, Wan Chai is our major provider, so I actually know them, their primary school. I know the Eastern District primary schools most. I get in touch with them most. But if you now ask us to move to another district, I don't know what is going to happen. And I don't know what the impact is going to be. I have to think about it and to discuss with our school management, especially our parents and alumni, because they want very much to stay in the Eastern District. and to follow the social district. Our parents' representative, they are office bearer of the Eastern PTA, but if they move to Wan Chai, the Wan Chai PTA is not as active, and they cannot contribute at all, and they cannot make contribution in the Eastern District. Okay, so if they ask us the question, I cannot answer the question. So now this is a question I cannot answer you at the time being, and I have to discuss with the various stakeholders before I can give you more.
Mr. Lee, I share the views of Mr. Leung, but I'd like to present some personal opinion here, not the opinion of the school sponsor. I'm quite an outreaching person. I myself don't think there's a huge difference. I'm just an ordinary person. If you allow me to straddle both districts, it doesn't matter. After the transitional period, we'll gradually move to the other district. So we'd like to have an adaptation period. Now, during the transitional period, can I get used to the new district? If you ask me, I have to consult my school sponsor. But for me, I can consider that. It's quite tricky. My school is known as Concordia Lutheran School, North Point. So it's rather subtle here. To the community or to the school sponsor, we would like to continue with our service. Why does my school sponsor run a school? They would like to serve the public. If you ask me if I can be given two choices, of course, that's good. Mr. To, we have a central plaza in Wan Chai North. Sometimes, if you take a taxi, you don't know the way, the taxi driver doesn't know the way, you may get to the wrong place. Of course, the ideal solution is to have the school in two school nets. The most unsatisfactory scenario is that the schools have to move to Wan Chai. In fact, I'd like to ask Ms. Koo Sao Chan a question. If the parents, elder brothers and elder sisters also study in the school, if the parents are alumni, the applicant student will get more marks. That's for primary school, not for secondary school. All along, the schools are in the smaller DCCA. In future, it will be the big Eastern District with a different school net. For the children of alumni or siblings of alumni, they may not opt for the alma mater of their parents and siblings. Then the connection will be broken. So can Ms. Koo respond, please? And will this impact on the continuation of school convention or tradition? Ms. Koo, yes, the convention may be broken. Siblings may be more detached from one another. The parents will be very happy to be able to bring their children to the same school. If they are to bring their children to two different schools, one in East and one in Wan Chai, they would be unhappy because on their way to school they can have communication, they can do parenting, they can establish a better relationship with their children. So with this relocation, the connection may be broken down. And then parents don't need to particularly go to two different schools to bring their children to school. Yes. Well, Mr. Chairman, whether or not I'm dissatisfied with this amendment order, whether or not I'm going to cast a supporting or dissenting vote, the administration should rectify this particular matter. So the Deputy Secretary should go back to the Education Bureau and discuss with the schools as soon as possible, because that's left out in the consultation exercise. The most ideal solution is to let the schools remain in both school nets. Today, we're very pleased to be able to invite you to come to this subcommittee meeting to air your views. I believe the administration has also heard you. Any more comments? If not, I'll conclude our discussion on this item. Just now you only talked about policies. Have you ever considered people? Mr. Leung, the Deputy Secretary, found this a minor issue. Is it that because he himself is not personally affected, so he doesn't feel the pain? Just think about the feelings of the 800-odd students and the parents. It's not just 800-odd. The whole family, their family members, and other people will also be affected. And these people will be the future pillars of our country. If we are so barbarously relocating them, will they in future be barbarous in their attitude towards the government? So I emphasize that we should have a people-oriented government. For human beings, a lot of aspects cannot be quantified. So I think you should be more concerned about people. You should make our students love society more, then our country will grow strong. I think we have to conclude here. Who would like to speak? Dr. Chow? Thank you, Chairman. I very much agree with Mr. Sin Chung Kai. That is a double school net arrangement. Any relocation has to consider a transitional arrangement. If the schools can be pegged to both school nets, then the worries of parents can be allayed, and it's very helpful to them. This school net issue is a technical issue which can be resolved. I hope that the administration can solve the problem pragmatically and allay the worries and fears of the parents and schools. As for traffic and transport, Wan Chai is interactive with other districts. Route arrangement, ancillary measures, bus companies' arrangements, etc. can be discussed between the two districts. In the past, we were unable to do so. Now this time, because of this redelineation of district boundaries, we'll have an opportunity to have discussions. That's helpful. As for administration and management, long-term planning, active coordination, it is a matter of facing the reality, is an urgent matter. I hope that after listening to the views of the schools and parents, an expeditious solution can be found by the administration. So thank you. There are 11 deputations and individuals expressing their views to us, so you can be excused. Now our meeting will continue with our agenda items. Deputy Secretary, we're very concerned about this issue of school nets. According to your estimation, when will you have a substantial response for the subcommittee? First of all, I have to thank you for your invaluable advice. Members have already made suggestions on how to solve the problem. At this juncture, it's difficult for you to give you a timetable. As I said just now, in the main, I have to go back and talk to the Education Bureau. Apparently, they told me that they had a procedure to follow. They have to discuss their own framework. So for school place allocation, the next meeting may be in March. Of course, that's quite far away from today. After this meeting, I'll discuss with them to see how we can expedite the whole process. And then we have to discuss with the schools. The government cannot unilaterally adopt an arrangement. I think this is a multi-party discussion. Can you give me a couple of days to work out the direction ahead? I believe you've heard us. For example, they asked whether they have to move from one school net to another. If they really have to move, can they be given a longer transitional period? I think you should inform members of your decision. All right, I believe we have expressed our views. Any more? Mr. Toh? Mr. Chairman, there's another matter, that is the primary school. The primary school did not send representatives here. It's the North Point Government Primary School. Of course, their status is rather dilemma. I don't think it's really feasible for them to come and present their views. What about the allocation of primary school places? For secondary schools, they will count alumni parents, alumni siblings. If you move the primary school, alumni parents and siblings won't give additional scores to the candidate. I think we must spend time to understand how government schools enroll students. Do alumni parents and siblings add to the marks of the pupil? If so, the government primary school should also remain in the same school net as the two secondary schools. Deputy Secretary, as regards the accurate scoring system, I'm not an expert, so I dare not say for sure. But in the past, the practice is if a pupil has already entered a particular school, if it has to change the school net, the option is like this. Say, originally is in District A, in the following school year is District B. As the pupil has not graduated yet, by primary 6, when the pupil chooses secondary schools, it can choose the original district or the future district. Of course, I know that Ms. Ho is not asking about this. She is asking about the scoring system. Yes, that is for the primary 1 admission system. I'll go back and find out whether they'll be affected. Any parent who have studied in a particular primary school. Now, if his or her child stays in the same school, this alumni status will give additional scores to the pupil. Now, you see the name is North Point Government Primary School. Well, the question is understood. He is not from the Education Bureau, so let him go back and ask the Education Bureau. Mr. Arili, let me share my views with you. I may not be totally correct. Concerning Ms. Sitho's question, if the parents studied in a primary school, this alumni scores will be added to the child irrespective of where it goes. My understanding is that for primary school pupils, there will be no impact resulting from change of school net. Dr. Kenneth Chan, I believe the administration has to give us a supplementary paper. Last time we asked some questions, but as Mr. To said just now, I am also dissatisfied with the reply.
Now, for the replies given to us, I think you will share my same feeling for D, for example. Is it really a complete answer? Well, population is one factor. Well, of course, everybody knows this. This is just stating the obvious. We just like to clarify with the administration. If you move some people from one district to another, how will the facilities and distribution of resources be affected? I don't think this is a satisfactory reply. It only says that it is one criterion, and that you also tell us that facilities are for everyone to use in the whole territory. This is really not up to standard reply, assuming that our questions are not up to standard. Now, we just want to have things clarified, and we must have a better response. Now, I think the Census and Statistics Department, again, has given us a very insufficient reply. Now, they can do statistics for each and every district, however small. And during the transitional period, they can also think of a way to look at the two districts in the eastern side of Hong Kong, and you can retain the two districts in one CHI. This is not our intention when we do the investigation. So I hope Mr. Leung can relay our points. Now, we do not want to have a very bureaucratic type of reply. Now, but if necessary, can you select these two districts and just do your comparison there? So this is something that you should be able to do. It's not that the two smaller districts just vanish and that you won't be doing any statistics on them. Mr. Leung. Now let me just respond to your second point. I think we may not be discussing the same issue now, because the statistics are issued regularly, and if the amendment comes into effect, will they do another set of old and new data? Now, from what we learned from the department, this is something they have been doing as a matter of course. And it's the same as in the Yau Chim Mong district. Now, if it's not for a long-term basis, but only done at request, now my impression is that they do have such raw data, and I can verify with them. Now, if that is the case, then it may not be the same as our original understanding of the work. Now, because if you clarify the issue, then people's worries will be allayed, and then the statistics department will help the individual districts to do the analysis. So if the department can help, then I believe that would help. Okay, now if there are other points, now maybe I respond to Mr. Chan's first point on the planning statistics. There are really many such statistics, and depending on the services they provide. Now, I agree that if you just look at it superficially, it's a very bureaucratic type of answer. Everybody knows that population is a factor. But as you all know, each department has some planning parameters. So if initially we discuss with the various departments, they would have shared this information with the district councils. Now, if members want to know more about particular areas, then I can dig deeper, because there are 60 plus departments, and they have a lot of planning statistics. So if there are particular areas that you'd like to know more, let me know. Now this is getting very interesting. It's not the first time we discuss this in electrical. Now, for the two district councils, now as you have consulted them, you would have asked them similar questions. Now, can you give us the questions that they have asked and the answers that you have given, so we would know the pros and cons, and would help us decide at our level? So is it possible to give us those information? What sort of information? We want to know the questions that DC members have asked and the replies given to them. For example, are there facilities that have been increased or decreased? For example, amenities, how many parks are needed? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Leung. So now, if you move the boundary, what sort of impact would it have on the district facilities? So can you give us such information, Mr. Leung? Now, I took part with the consultation of the DCs. Now, I don't remember them asking such detailed figures. Now, Eastern District, for example, they would ask about 7-a-side soccer pitches. If you go along the planning guides, and based on the population, there's a shortfall, even if there's nothing being done, say a shortfall of 4. And if you move the boundary, there will be a shortfall of 4.5 soccer pitches. Now, I believe they have discussed something like that, and usually recreation facilities. Now, if these are areas you would like to have, then I would try to find out such figures. Now, if the DCs have expressed concern for these areas, then let us have those information. Okay, Ms. Sit Ho. Now, in the government's reply, it should be 459(02). Now, it should be that number. Now, in the reply, section B, it says that they will confirm with the department that the two DCCAs will not have any impact on the ambulance service and so on. But I would like to have more information on the fire services and the ambulance services. The emergency services, can we be given more detailed answers? Now, should there be a fire, for example, somebody calling 999, which fire station will be responsible for sending the emergency vehicles? And after the change, will there be any corresponding changes? Rather than just giving us a blanket, no, nothing has changed. Because looking at it now, I don't know what changes are there. And as Mr. Chung was saying, if you move the facilities to another district, then we will have a shortfall of hospital. Okay, now we will have a shortfall of swimming pools, but my concern has to do with hospitals' emergency services. If you dial 999, how long would it take for the emergency vehicles to arrive? Now, would there be any changes? Now, if there are changes, then the performance pledge would be affected. The station, the journey from the station to the scene will be lengthened as a result. This may be the case. Mr. Chong. Yes, I think you need to provide a table showing us all the answers. As Ms. Ho was saying, now for Tin Hau, they have their own fire station. But if you move to Wan Chai, will they service the neighboring area? Because there is another station belonging to the typhoon shelter area. So if you move the area to, say, Wan Chai, then will the services in one district serve the neighboring district as a result of the change? Mr. Sin, now we're talking about the Eastern District amendment now, but a friend from the Civic Party also discussed there are other factors not changed as a result. Now, are you going to give us a paper on this? Now, for example, in Ma Wan or even in Kwun Tong, there are 2 districts there. Can you also give us an answer? Now, I don't think this is within the purview of the present paper, but can Mr. Leung answer the question? I think for our present exercise, now we have said in our earlier electrical paper, now if you will bear with me, we are trying to deal with the 2015 DC election to see the present 18 seats, elected seats, and the major boundaries of the 18 districts. Now you have already approved the addition of the 19 seats. And for the major boundaries, there is no need to make any changes because they've been in use for many years. And we understand that society as a whole it has accepted this for a long time. So we only focus our attention on the increase in the number of seats. Now we've received feedback that for the Eastern District, because of its amalgamation, there has been a deletion of appointed seats, and so there is a view that for Wan Chai, because with the disappearance of appointed seats, they would have very few members, and so the thought arises as to whether certain seats should be moved from one district to another. And as has been said, we've discussed with the relevant parties, and so we have come up with the 2 DCCA option presented to you today. So to go back to your point, Mr. Sin, from the government's perspective, we do not feel that there is a major need to make any changes for the outline for the 18 districts. And you understand that this is for the election committee to do its work, to see the final delineation of the smaller areas within the 18 districts. So I'd like to remind members that for this particular exercise, the amendment order, we should not be taking too long to finish the discussion, because generally speaking, we will have to have a certain lead time. Now, depending on the number of seats in each major district, to then decide on the delineation of the smaller districts. And this will take time and will require public consultation. Okay, it's now 4:30, and there's going to be another meeting at 4:45. So I think we have to have one more meeting at least.
And
the administration needs time to do its work. Other issues were also raised today. For example, we're concerned about school nets. I believe the administration has to respond as soon as possible. So don't act like this time. Don't just give us the paper at 12 noon on the same day of the meeting. That's unacceptable. The Secretariat has identified 2 time slots for us. Administration, you propose the 22nd of January or February. So either the 22nd of January or the 12th of February. Well, maybe we should fix it tentatively on the 22nd of January for enactment in LegCo, and then we hold our next meeting at 4:30 p.m. on the 6th of January because we have the holidays. I think this is long enough for them to work. All right, if there's no further comment, that's it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.